I remember at the start of the lecture, before the initiation, Srila Prabhupada sent two boys out of the room because they didn't have tilak on. Boys were named Girish and Birbhadra. These were the sons of Shilavati, who had been living at New Vrindavan with us. They were 8, 9, 10, something like that. So even though they were just boys, Prabhupada saw their faces. They didn't have tilak on. So he said, "Go put tilak." He just motioned them out of the room, put tilak. And then while they were out of the room anointing their bodies with tilak, Prabhupada started talking about tilak and how tilak was our trademark. We are selling Krishna for free, and still no one will take. And when he said that, he just started laughing. His belly started, like, no one will take. He started laughing. And then Srila Prabhupada started giving a very intricate lecture, at least intricate to me. Perhaps I was just tired or whatever. I couldn't follow it, what Srila Prabhupada was talking about. And then finally, I started to catch on when his lecture was interrupted by Bhagavan Das's, Bhagavan was the president of the temple, his little baby son started clanging on the these kartals he had in his hand. Mother Krishna Bhamini was holding him, and he started clanging on the kartals. And when the child did that, Prabhupada expertly used it in his lecture. He said, just like this child, he has had practice. So Prabhupada had been talking about transmigration of the soul. I hadn't been following it. And then when Prabhupada said he has had practice, he started beaming at this little boy. And then the little boy started beaming at Srila Prabhupada. We were looking at the boy, looking at Prabhupada. It was like a very dramatic pause. He has had practice. It's like there was something going on between Prabhupada and this little boy. And then I started to catch on. It was about transmigration. And then the next day was Vyasa-puja. And Srila Prabhupada gave an address that's been published in different places, famous Vyasa-puja address at New Vrindavan, 1972. And Srila Prabhupada very intelligently started talking about the meaning of Vyasa-puja and how the spiritual master considers himself the very humble servant of the previous acharyas and of Krishna. He doesn't think he's God Almighty, which is what one may have thought by seeing all this worship being offered to him on the Vyasa-san. There were many guests. Again, there were journalists, scholars, all kinds of people. So he started talking about how he considered himself the dog of God. I am the dog of God. He said it's just like if you want to please a very big man in this world, it's very difficult to even meet him, or what to speak of pleasing him, because he's so big. But if you simply give his dog a 2-cent lozenge, Prabhupada said, then very easily he's pleased. So I am the dog of God. It is very difficult to please Krishna. It's very easy to please me. Just chant Hare Krishna. So Jai Srila Prabhupada, and we had a big roaring kirtan. Before the kirtan, Srila Prabhupada took questions. And Prabhupada in his lecture had been talking about how strong Maya is. So the first question immediately when he took questions was from this long hair in the back, long-haired fellow. And he said, if the purpose of life is to know God, Krishna, then why is Maya so strong? As though that were some kind of defect in Krishna's arrangement. So without a blink or a wink or a skip and a beat, Prabhupada said, your purpose is not strong. And Prabhupada said that with such power, again it was like we all went, "Ah!" We were just blown away, completely blown away. Not just this fellow who asked the question, but we were all stunned by Prabhupada's quick and rapid reply to that question with such power and profundity. Your purpose is not strong. And it was like he wasn't just speaking to that guy, he was speaking to everybody. So during the question and answers, there was one fellow from Jamaica who was a life member who was an industrialist in Jamaica. And Prabhupada had spent most of the lecture just blasting and hammering away at the materialistic civilization, the modern industrial civilization. This guy was an industrialist. So he raises his hand. Prabhupada, what about the wheels of industry? So without hesitation, Prabhupada said, stop those wheels. Whereas in other contexts, Prabhupada encouraged us to use the technology for Krishna's service, what have you. But in this case, Srila Prabhupada came down heavy on him, and he said, "Stop those wheels." So he must have known the man could hear that in the right spirit. Because Prabhupada, of course, was also using those wheels, turning him in a spiritual direction, yukta vairagya. And then I went in the temple room, just in time to hear some questions and answers that Srila Prabhupada was fielding after his talk, his arrival talk at the temple. And I got there just in time to hear this one devotee who had been with devotees. Actually, he was the younger brother of Mother Janava, and his name was Jay. And he asked, he had since being with the devotees, he had become associated with some born-again Christians. And he asked this question in a challenging mood. He said, "So what is this love of God you're feeling?" Just sort of out of left field, a real kind of a challenging tone. So, you know, when Prabhupada would answer questions, he would answer more the intent of the questioner than the denotation, the meaning of the question. He would answer the spirit of the asker. So, Srila Prabhupada said, "What is this love of God that I am feeling? It is that I am not afraid of anything." That's how he chose to answer that, because he was challenging. That's all. The first impression I remember about the installation was Srila Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasa-san, and I believe there were also initiations going on at the time, before the actual inaugural arati. So I was sitting to the left of Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa-san, to the left of His Divine Grace, and I saw him while the initiation ceremony was going on. He was moving his lips. So I wanted to hear what he was saying, so I sort of snuck up behind the Vyasa-san and I put my ear behind Srila Prabhupada, and he was chanting the Brahma Samhita, these deep, soft, resonant tones. Advaita Martuta Manadi Mananta Rupam, just on and on. It was just so wonderful. Then I went back to my place, and then during the initiation, all of a sudden, Srila Prabhupada, he wanted something. There was something that had to be done for the ceremony, and no one could understand what Srila Prabhupada wanted. Shyam Sundar couldn't understand him, Pradyumna couldn't understand him. And Srila Prabhupada was looking all over the room. I could see he was looking to see if anybody could understand what he wanted. And finally, his head wheeled over in my direction, and his eyes fell on me. And it's the only time I remember actually Srila Prabhupada looking directly at me, except for the initiation. And he looked at me, and I remember I was just sitting there, and I was just grinning. Just like this stupid grin on my face. It's kind of like, Srila Prabhupada's looking at me, like this, and he's looking at me. And he gave me this look like, "You are an idiot. You could never in a million years understand what I want." But he didn't, the look said that, but at the same time, it was a look of such compassion. Like, I was an idiot, but, you know, that was okay. I mean, it wasn't okay, but it was like, I still love you. So I was sitting there thinking, that's right. I could tell. He looked at me like, I'm an idiot. That's right, Srila Prabhupada. I was thinking this. I'm an idiot. You love me, and I'm an idiot. And I was just blissed out, you know, just because Srila Prabhupada was looking at me and I was an idiot. So anyway, finally somebody understood what he wanted, and the ceremony continued. And then Srila Prabhupada at some point, I don't remember when, but he got off the Vyasa-san. I don't remember this, but he left. But the ceremony was still going on. And then it was time for the inaugural arati of Radha Kalachandji. And when the curtains opened, there was Srila Prabhupada on the stage with Sri Sri Radha Kalachandji, with this very Spartan background, nothing like today. You see the pictures of Kalachandji Dham. And there was Srila Prabhupada doing Achman, ready to do the inaugural arati. I said, what a treat. I've never seen Srila Prabhupada do arati. So I remember watching Srila Prabhupada perform this arati, and it's made a very deep impression of how he performed the arati. It was very deliberate and very meditative and very, just very deep with bhakti. It wasn't any, quick with circles. It was just very deliberate and meditative. And then when Srila Prabhupada offered the water to the deities, then he turned to us, and to my memory, we'd always been just passing the water around. The pujari would put it in the cup, and then somebody would come around and sprinkle. But Srila Prabhupada didn't do that. He just took the water from the water conch, and he put it in his hand. and he started flinging drops of water out at us, the congregation. And I remember leaping up in the air and catching these droplets of water and thinking of the first Gurvastak, the spiritual masters receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as the cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master extinguishes the blazing fire of material existence. And I remember this was just like the perfection of that shlok, that stanza. Feeling these drops coming from Srila Prabhupada's lotus hand and then just drinking them. So that was very wonderful. That at some time during one of those lectures, Srila Prabhupada told us frankly that we had all come to him, to Krishna, because of prasadam. He just told us flat out, we were all prasadam bhaktas. So Prabhupada, when Prabhupada said that, he was being fanned by Abhiram Prabhu, who was the temple president. And Abhiram is very reserved. He doesn't just open his mind to anybody. He's a very cool customer. And but when Prabhupada said we were all prasadam devotees, he looked at Abhiram and said, "You too, Abhiram?" So Abhiram was became very sheepish, just out of character completely. He said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, me too." And when he said, "Me too," Srila Prabhupada said, "Jai." And when he said Jai, his head just wheeled slowly like the sun rising. And as his head wheeled, his smile kind of got bigger and bigger until it was like ear to ear. Jai. And his head all across us, and his head wheeled across us. It was like we went, Jai. It was so funny. Srila Prabhupada stayed, he stayed longer than a week there. He stayed a week to 10 days in June 76. And it was the time when he cleaned up the sahaja tendency that some devotees were getting into because the CC had come out recently, the so-called Gopi Bhava Club, and Prabhupada came down very heavy on it. I wasn't in on those meetings because I wasn't part of the club. I did go to one meeting. I was invited, and I knew something was wrong because the Bhagavad-gita was being minimized as just dealing with the modes of material nature. Prabhu, it's for neophytes. So anyway, Prabhupada did come down heavy on the devotees there, and it's what they needed, what we all needed to hear. The first full-blown Western, sahaja weed was growing around the Bhakti Lata. So Prabhupada came down very heavy. I wasn't there, so I can't say firsthand, but there were many famous quotes that came out of that, devotees even asking, "But Prabhupada, you say everything is in your books, that's there too, this intimate Leela." So I said, "Yes, my books are like a drugstore," I heard Prabhupada saying. But it's not that when you walk in the drugstore, you just buy any medicine. You have to get the medicine that's appropriate for you. First Kurukshetra Leela, then Rasa Leela. First deserve, then desire. That was another answer Prabhupada gave to one of their questions, even challenges I heard. So Srila Prabhupada was so sweet, but so heavy, hard as a thunderbolt, soft as a rose. So because he's like that, and I'm even working on the books, I'm the indexer for the books, and I'm working on the 8th canto as he's there translating and dictating, and because he's so heavy, I'm thinking, I have these mixed feelings in my consciousness. I'm thinking, boy, Srila Prabhupada's been here a week. This is great. I wonder when he's going to leave. Because it was so heavy, just to be, I wasn't even living with him. I wasn't his servant, personal. I was just living in the same neighborhood where Prabhupada was staying. He was in his quarters in Mini Dwarkadish Dham there. And I'm thinking, this is intense. I don't know how long I can go on, just being in the same neighborhood as Prabhupada. He was so heavy, So that was another, indication that I had a long way to go before I could be intimate with Prabhupada. When Srila Prabhupada made it to Chicago for Rath Yatra, and the first impression I remember is when we greeted, Srila Prabhupada came in early in the morning, around 6:30, so we had Guru Puja for him. And I remember it was ecstatic chanting and dancing. But there was one devotee, I think it might have been Mahabodhi Prabhu. He was dancing kind of like, he was sort of like doing the twist, or some So he was boogieing somehow. And Srila Prabhupada, I don't think he singled him out. I forget if he did or he didn't. But he stopped the kirtan. Srila Prabhupada stopped this ecstatic kirtan. And he pointed to a picture of Lord Chaitanya with his arms upraised. He said, "Dance like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu." So he would encourage anybody, however they were dancing. But he wanted, in this case, the devotee to come to a higher platform, dance like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the last time I saw Srila Prabhupada was in Los Angeles, and I was working at the BBT, making the indexes for his books. He was sending the 8th canto through production, 8th and 9th. Working on the 8th, that's right, because there was some purport in the 8th canto where Srila Prabhupada is talking about the days of the week and why they're in the order they're in, and it has to do with the planets, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So Srila Prabhupada said, "I'm simply traveling all over the world." He'd just come from Hawaii, Fiji, whatever. And I'm asking this question, why are the days of the week in the order they're in? So he was asking us too. So why is Sunday the first day? So Srila Prabhupada, or some devotee piped up and said, "Because it is the Lord's day." And Srila Prabhupada said, "Don't bring in religion." Because he wanted to put everything on a scientific basis, and nobody accepts religion in this day and age. It's just all sectarian and sentimental. So that was very significant, that Srila Prabhupada wanted to set this scientific basis of the days of the week. And so we started talking about the order of the planets. The sun is closest, then the moon, controversial point, Mars, Mercury, etc., Jupiter, Venus, or whatever the order is, Saturn. So, and then I remember a couple of morning walks, nice morning walks in the park near Santa Monica, somewhere. And around 6 o'clock in the morning, the sun was just rising and was coming through the trees, and Hari Prabhu was taping. And I remember this one thing, how there was this little old lady in the park, saw us coming one morning, this whole squadron of saffron moving toward her. And we all were coming toward her, and I was wondering what Srila Prabhupada going to see. I know he seemed like he was going to say something. What's Srila Prabhupada going to say? So what Srila Prabhupada said was, he didn't say Hare Krishna, or he just said, in the most gracious way, he said, "Good morning," with very long, gracious tones. And the lady kind of gave this nice return, the greeting, and she gave a look like, this is the most wonderful thing I've ever seen. So Srila Prabhupada knew just what to say at the right time. Je anilo premadana karuna prachu